Hey friends, welcome back to Willow Creek Homestead. My name is Kenzie if you are new here. And in today's video, we are going to be starting week 1 of the Pantry Challenge, also known as the 3 Rivers Challenge, hosted by Jessica from 3 Rivers Homestead. So this year is the first year of doing content creation, and I have always wanted to take part in the Pantry Challenge. I just was never able to. So this is going to be a first for me, and basically a pantry challenge is just utilizing what we have already preserved throughout the spring and summer months and a little bit into the fall and not relying on a grocery store. So the cool thing about the pantry challenge is there are no rules and you can make your own. So I have decided to give myself a $50 weekly grocery budget on just fresh produce and dairy and things of that nature. I am going to try really hard not to run out and grab additional ingredients and things for recipes that I might be making. And for those of you that have already been watching, you know my husband and I are in the process of building our dream homestead. And I think that this will be really nice to dwindle down the pantry and all of the freezers and things so that I'm not trying to carry over so much to the new property. And I think that this challenge is really going to help me be creative and come up with different ways to utilize things and go through them that I might not have otherwise come up with on my own. So from here on, I'm going to at least try to do the entire month of January, if not a little bit into February. But if I get to the end of February even and I decide that I can go a little bit longer, I'm definitely going to do so. My goal is to go through as much as I possibly can before we go to move so that I don't have nearly as much to do. And that way my pantry will be ready to restock because we will also be having a huge garden and I cannot wait to grow and preserve all of those things with you. So this is going to be a great way to just make room and get ready for next year's growing season. So I hope this video brings you guys some inspiration. I hope it shows you the many ways to use preserved foods, and I hope it brings you some joy to watch. So from this point forward, for at least 4 weeks, I will be giving you guys a ton of pantry staples and recipes and showing you how I come up with all different kinds of ways to use these things. I hope you all enjoy this series, and let's get started. So welcome to dinner on night 1 of the pantry challenge. We are going to be making some barbecue spare ribs together, and if you've been watching for a little while, we actually prepared these together not too long ago. So how I do this is I buy packages of spare ribs and I divide them into 2. And then I also utilize some of my homemade barbecue sauce and sprinkle in a little bit of garlic salt. I get them mixed in really well, and I prep about 4 to 6 bags at a time so that whenever I want to do a really simple dinner, they are already done. So I will try to include throwbacks and extra footage for you guys if you are interested in going back and watching some older videos of mine. But here they are now that they have been in my freezer for a couple months. I'm just getting them put on a baking sheet, spreading them out. Now, these were pre-seasoned, but sometimes the seasoning can get lost in the freezing process. So I always go ahead and just re-season them lightly, and then I cover them and put them in the oven at about 415 for roughly 20-ish minutes. And now I am just going ahead and preparing some yellow squash. I just cut them in circles, and then I also just run my knife down the middle so that it makes little half moons, and they tend to cook a little bit easier that way. So I went ahead and put some garlic infused oil and some grass-fed, grass-finished butter in a skillet, got them in, and now I am putting some grass-fed, grass-finished butter and garlic in with some preserved corn from last year's garden season. I did not grow the corn myself, but we have a person locally that we get it from. So after about 15 to 20-ish minutes, I go ahead and take the tin foil off, and then I go ahead and cook the ribs again for about 20 minutes until they are browned enough on top to our liking, and then after that, they are done. So I was just showing how easily these cut through. It doesn't look like they cut that easy because I was having a bit of a difficult time running my fork and knife together, but they turned out fantastic. And now I'm just getting my daughter's plate ready for her. So putting on some corn and some of that squash along with her ribs and ketchup, and dinner on this night is done. So we are on night 2, and I'm just going ahead and turning my Instant Pot on saute and putting some hamburger in there because we are going to be making some taco soup together. And what I love about using the Instant Pot is I only have to use one thing. I don't have to dirty any more dishes, and we use a lot of home preserved food. So after my hamburger starts to brown, I go ahead and add some peppers in from last year's garden along with some leeks. Now, I did not grow the leeks, but I found a really good deal at the store, so I preserved a bunch of them up last year's growing season. I should also mention that you can definitely use a different meat than hamburger. It does not have to be hamburger. Use chicken, turkey, whatever you would like. You can get really, really creative with taco soup. So after these are good and sauteed, I go ahead and add a garlic puck and then some garlic salt, along with some homegrown, home dehydrated basil. Basil goes in everything, am I right? And then I'm also adding in some onion powder to this as well. And then I'm just combining all of this and letting it get some really, really good color on it. And then after it has some good color on it, I am just taking 1 pint of home canned black beans and getting them rinsed off really well and combining them in. I should also mention that on some of the ingredients, I do double them. It's just not in the video. A friend of ours just had a baby and I wanted to give them some homemade soup as well. So then after that, I am opening 1 pint of home canned tomato juice. This is extra tomato juice from whenever I make salsa. I always save it and it is incredible in taco soup, along with 1 pint of chicken broth. And then I am also utilizing 1 pint of home canned diced tomatoes, and I also went ahead and got them rinsed off. And then I am putting in 1/2 pint of picante sauce. This is another throwback for you all. This is by far the best thing that I canned this year. If you have never tried canning picante sauce before, I will leave the video up above. It is absolutely incredible and it makes soups like this phenomenal. So I'm going ahead and getting one of those added in, and then I am putting in, I don't know, maybe like 2 or 3 tablespoons of taco seasoning. It was definitely not enough, so I would just say season to taste. So the rice is also optional, but I went ahead and added about a half a cup-ish of rice in here, and look at the color that's already starting to develop. All I do is put my Instant Pot on the soup broth setting, and then once it comes up to temperature, I just put it on keep warm, and that is plenty enough to cook all of the rice all the way through and keep everything warm until I go to serve it. So now I'm just getting our friends some of this delicious soup in a little container to gift them for them having a baby, just so that they don't have to make supper on this night. Whenever I was pregnant, that was something I really appreciated that my friends and family did for me. So I always try to do that for others whenever I can. So I'm just getting this all prepped and prepared for them. And then I am also going to include sides for them to top the taco soup with. So I'm going ahead and getting some shredded cheese out, and here I am trying to figure out how not to make a mess, but I just decided to go for it because I usually always make a mess anyway. So I'm just getting a little baggie of cheese, and then I am also going to go ahead and give them some chips to top the top of it with as well. And usually I would include sour cream in something like this, but I didn't have any and they ended up having some at their house. So that worked out okay for everybody. But I'm just going ahead and getting some chips in here, and then I'm going to go ahead and crunch them up so it's easier for them to put on their soup. So I'm just getting everything finished, and then dinner for them and for us on this night was done, and it was absolutely incredible. So now we are moving on to the next night, and we are going to make some absolutely delicious meatloaf together. So I just start off with a couple pounds of hamburger and a bunch of breadcrumbs. I add in 1 egg, usually per pound of meat that I am doing, along with a little bit of milk and a bunch of Parmesan cheese. When you think you are finished, you're not. Keep adding the Parmesan cheese. And then I'm also sprinkling in some basil. I'm really bad about picking out stems whenever I dehydrate this stuff, you guys. So I just usually pick them back out of things that I added into. And then a little bit of Italian herbs and seasoning, and then some garlic powder and garlic salt. So once you have all of that done, I go ahead and put in some onions as well. And then it's time to get all of this mixed together. Now, I make my meatloaf a little bit untraditional. I don't use a loaf pan. I put it on a baking sheet, and I'll show you how I do that. But once you start to mix this, if you notice that it's too wet, go ahead and just add some more breadcrumbs until it's the consistency that you like. So once I have it all completed, I go ahead and start laying this down on a baking sheet and just spreading it out evenly. Now, I'm not opposed to using loaf pans. I just like that the meatloaf is able to brown really, really well on all of these sides. But if you would rather use a meatloaf pan, then go for it. So basically, after I get all of this pressed down, I season the top again with a little bit of garlic salt, and then I cover the top and put this in the oven at about 405 degrees for 20-ish minutes, and I leave it covered. So then I'm also getting some potatoes going on my stove. I just peeled them, cut them up, and boiled them until they were done. And now I'm going to make some homemade mashed potatoes. So I'm adding in some cream, some butter, and then a bunch of garlic salt. And I use a lot of garlic salt. I feel like you have to use a lot for your potatoes to turn out really, really good. So I always include a bunch of really good seasonings. I also added some basil and chives to this. And then after you get all of your seasonings in, you're just going to start mashing this up and add cream as you go and a little bit more butter if you would like, if it's too stiff. But basically, after I combine all of this, the mashed potatoes are done, and feel free to add more seasoning as well. But look at that. Isn't that absolutely delicious looking? These mashed potatoes were incredible. So here is the meatloaf after it had browned in the oven for about 20 minutes. Now I'm just going back and putting some ketchup and barbecue sauce on the top, and then I'm going to spread this around, put it back in the oven at the exact same temperature for another 20-ish minutes or until it's cooked on top to your liking. And this always turns out so incredibly good. You guys, look at how delicious that looked. We had a friend join us for dinner on this night that does not like meatloaf, but they said they enjoyed mine. So I am considering that a win. So this wraps up week 1 of the pantry challenge. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your week, and I will see you in the next video.